education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So subscribe and hit that bell icon right now. So, have you ever been in a situation where you're not sure if you have a fear of intimacy or if you are in fact asexual? If this is something you've struggled with, I'm here to help you decipher this. First of all, if you're new to my channel, you don't know who I am, I'm Sandra Bellamy. I'm the best-selling author of Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual, 78 Life Lessons to Ace Your Life. Great book if you're looking to date or get into a relationship, and also Asexual Perspectives, 47 Asexual Stories, Love, Life and Sex, A Celebration of Asexual Diversity book, which is fantastic for you to read if you're new to asexuality or the asexual spectrum, to understand it better in real life context, rather than just have textbook definitions on the internet about it. Both of these are available on Amazon. Let's crack on with the show. So, yes, are you experiencing a fear of intimacy, or are you experiencing asexuality as a sexual orientation? Right, asexuality is a sexual orientation that is based on the lack of sexual attraction. But obviously that can raise concerns and intrigue and curiosity as to why yourself might not experience sexual attraction. So, as this is a key hallmark of asexuality, you might be wondering, like, what's going on? Am I asexual? I've always been asexual, or have I just been afraid of intimacy? I've not worked that out yet. So, let's dive in. First of all, you have to understand there are people that have a genuine fear of intimacy for many different reasons, right? This could be religious reasons because their family is not intimate in their religious environment. This could be due to ethnicity as well, the way they're brought up. You know, if their family is not very intimate, for example, not emotionally intimate, not physically intimate. If you have experienced negative relationships in your life, if you've experienced abuse of any sort, these can be all reasons why you might have a fear of intimacy. So when you're trying to decide, hello in chat, nice to see you. When you're trying to decide or determine if you're asexual or if you've got a fear of intimacy, you have to look at the reason as to why you have a fear of intimacy. First of all, you need to admit you have a fear of intimacy. You need to come to the realization and self-awareness of the fact you've got a fear of intimacy, but then we have to work on why you have a fear of intimacy. Like, what is the reason behind that, right? You might, of course, be genuinely asexual, but there are other reasons why you might fear intimacy. So first of all, I want to take us over to Wikipedia, and I want us to look together at the definition of intimacy, because a lot of people just think, oh, well, she's talking about sex. But I'm not just talking about sex, right? So if we look at here, fear of intimacy, right? Fear of intimacy is generally a social phobia and anxiety disorder, resulting in difficulty forming close relationships with another person. The term can also refer to a scale on a psychometric test, or a type of adult in attachment theory psychology. The fear of intimacy is a fear of being emotionally and or physically close to another individual. This fear is also defined as the inhibited capacity of an individual, because of anxiety, to exchange thought and feelings of personal significance with another individual is highly valued. Fear of intimacy is the expression of existential views in that to love and to be loved makes life seem precious and death more inevitable. It can result from any number of dysfunctional bonding experiences, ranging from early childhood parental attachments to relationship failures in adulthood. So this is the reasoning behind why a fear of intimacy may occur. So you have to analyze in yourself, like, are you experiencing these things because you have a background and history of these type of things? Or are you all of a sudden realizing that you just don't experience sexual attraction, but you like intimacy in other ways. Because intimacy, like we've seen here, is not just about sex. It's about being emotionally open to communication and connection with another human being, as well as being physically close to another individual. So you can emotionally bond with someone in many, many different ways. So people with this fear are anxious about or afraid of intimate relationships. They believe that they do not deserve love or support from others. So you have to analyze as to where you are in the fear of intimacy. Like, are you fearing intimacy with another human being because you feel you don't deserve love or support from others, or is it for some other reason? So asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction, meaning you don't get the urge, need, or want for partner sexual intercourse. So if you go around thinking, oh, I want sex with this person, I've got the urge for sex, oh, but I'm afraid to approach them, I'm afraid to speak to them, I'm afraid of what they'll think, I'm afraid of rejection, that's a fear of intimacy, right? But if you just don't experience sexual attraction, but you might like other forms of intimacy, such as emotional intimacy, mental intimacy, and maybe even close proximity intimacy, even if it's without the sex, then, you know, it's highly likely you're more going to be asexual, right? So, they believe, so fear of intimacy has 3 defining features. Content, which represents the ability to communicate personal information. Emotional valence, which refers to the feelings about personal information exchange. And vulnerability, signifying their regard for the person they are intimate with. So it goes on to like talk more about attachment styles, adult attachment types. Secure individuals have a sense of worthiness or lovability and are comfortable with intimacy and autonomy. And preoccupied persons lack the sense of self-worthiness, yet view others positively and seek their love and acceptance. Fearful people lack a sense of lovability and are avoidant of others in anticipation of rejection. Dismissing persons feel worthy of love, yet detached from others who they generally regard as untrustworthy. So what you've got to bear in mind here is that they're talking about attachment styles. So you can have, to put it in plain English, you can have avoidant attachment, anxious avoidant attachment, which are 3 unsecure attachments. I think I've got a little piece of hair sticking up, haven't I? There we go. It's like my little antenna zooming into this stuff. And so moving on, and then you've also got a secure attachment style. So secure attachment people usually feel lovable, worthy of love, and therefore they're far less likely to have a fear of intimacy because they don't think there's anything wrong with someone being intimate with them. They don't feel a need to push the person away like an avoidant person would do because they don't fear intimacy, but at the same time they don't feel a need to make that the center of their world because they're okay whether they have intimacy or not, but they still value it and see it as important. So an anxious person can feel like they don't want intimacy because that's why they can push people away. Now, I have anxious attachment, but I actually like intimacy a lot. For me, my anxiety actually makes me want to be more intimate with people a lot of the time, like people I'm close to, like close friends, for example, and especially in a romantic relationship. So I don't think this is the same for everyone, right? But if we look, for example, at my life, right, I have no fear if I'm in a relationship, for example, of opening up to a person, of sharing my secrets. I mean, I'm very open on this channel. I'm very intimate with you on this channel. If you go back through all my history, I've documented my whole life. I don't have a fear of being intimate with people like you who I don't even know apart from through the screen. And I'm open, and I can understand why people have a fear of intimacy because I have had difficult relationships. I have been in relationships that are unsuitable. I've had abusive relationships, the abuse from the other person to me, and that does make you feel like, oh my gosh, you know, like when you've been intimate with someone, it can make you feel like, oh, this is not good, right? And it can make you a bit scared to get back into a relationship again. But that scaredness is quite a good thing, because you don't want to end up repeating the same patterns and get into a relationship with the next person that comes along when you've had your heart broken. You want to take a break, refocus, recenter yourself, and work on yourself to improve your own attachment style, your own patterns of behavior that might not be healthy and attracting unhealthy people, and progress in your life. So I personally don't have a fear of intimacy in the whole, right? Years ago I did have more of a fear of intimacy, in the sense of hugging people. I could only literally hug the guy I was in a relationship with at the time. So in terms of romantic relationship, years ago, I'm an asexual person that has had sex, even though I don't have sex anymore, and it repulses me personally these days. I have had sex in the past, so I had no problem, being intimate physically with the guy. I was very good at expressing my needs sexually, like what I liked, what I didn't like, when I wanted him to stop. So I have no fear of intimacy in that way. Like, if I wanted to have sex again, I would. I know what I'm doing. I know how it works. Have no fear about expressing that to a guy. So I don't have a fear of intimacy. I'm not asexual because I have a fear of intimacy, because I don't have those fears, right? I have a whole history when I've been in relationships predominantly with heterosexuals for much of my life. So I don't like sex now. I never really I was okay about it before. I was accommodating it before. I wasn't repulsed before, right? But since discovering I'm asexual, no, I don't have to have sex, and that I was just really having it because that's what's expected of you in a relationship. I don't need it anymore. I feel very sex repulsed for me personally these days. Not for other people who like it, want it, enjoy it, need it. It's all consensual. So I think when you're analysing if you've got a fear of intimacy, you have to ask yourself, if you weren't asexual, would you still be able to do that type of thing physically, right? Which is probably a hard question to answer, because if you've always known you're asexual, then there's no reason for you to even want to put yourself in that position, right? But I think you have to discover for yourself, do you have a fear of rejection if you're intimate? I don't have a fear of rejection if I'm intimate, in the sense that I know I've been rejected when I've been intimate before. For example, I've been very intimate in a relationship and then it's broken up. I feel really bad and awful, but I survive, I live, I move on. It doesn't stop me wanting to kiss and cuddle a guy. It doesn't stop me wanting to have an emotional connection with a guy, because for me personally, I have to have an emotional connection with a guy in order to feel close to him. And the more emotionally connected I feel to him, the more I love him in a good way, the more it's healthier for me in the relationship, because I do have an anxious attachment style. Hello, Minky, nice to see you. Lots of love. And so for me personally, that's really important. Now, if you're an avoidant attachment style, you're much more likely to have a fear of intimacy, because an avoidant attachment style, they value their autonomy and being single usually a lot more than in a relationship. And the avoidant attachment style usually comes from childhood, where either they were smothered by their parents and their parents were all up in their business all the time, and therefore they felt like they needed to get away, and this closeness was just too much, and they felt like pushing them away. Or intimacy was seen as something that they were judged for, criticized for, or they were hurt because of, that you opened up and then all of a sudden you're cut down, and instead of people having open, honest, healthy conversations, your intimacy was met with disdain. It was met with, repulsion, or met with some offhanded comment and disregard and dismissed and all this lot. And obviously an anxious attached person can have the same happen, that they were anxiously attached, for example, to their parents or family. Their parents weren't giving them cuddles, they weren't giving them love, they weren't making them feel safe in relationships. And, to know it's okay if you've got a problem, you can go to your family and they're going to be open and honest with you in a healthy way. You're going to be able to share, look, when you did this, it didn't feel good to me. And your parents are not going to be like, well, why didn't it feel good to you? I'm going to do that anyway. They'd be like, oh my gosh, tell me about that. Tell me why it felt that way to you. What was it about what I did that made you feel uncomfortable? Because I want us to address this, because I want you to feel comfortable in our connection, you know, because this is what healthy people do. Unhealthy people will be defensive, they'll stonewall you. Stonewall is like going quiet on you and giving you the silent treatment. They'll deflect their shortcomings onto you. They'll deflect the conversation. You might be sharing an intimate moment, they'll deflect that back onto you and make you a problem. So you've got to be very, very careful. Now, obviously, asexuals can have these attachment styles and have all these issues going on, but that is not necessarily why they're asexual. You could still be asexual and still have these attachment styles, because attachment styles affect everyone, whether you're asexual, whatever sexual orientation you are. But is the fear of intimacy based on your asexuality, or is it based on some other thing, right? Is your asexuality, for example, what makes you repulsed in getting physically physically attached to someone, or physically intimate with someone? So is it just like you're just so, because you don't experience sexual attraction, if you're an asexual person doesn't, and you're not interested in sex, and the actual act of sex itself makes you feel repulsed, and there's no other reason for that, that would be because you are asexual rather than anything else, right? But if you're like, oh my God, I got so badly hurt, this person crushed me, we were really physically intimate, and maybe they did something that was off physically for you, maybe they pushed your boundaries too much, then that could be a reason why you've got trauma, and then maybe and then you decide to be asexual rather than asexuality being a natural part of who you are. You decide to, I live an asexual life, which, you can't make yourself be asexual, right? But some people are like, I'm living an asexual life now. I mean, they're abstaining from sex, but abstaining from sex is not the same as being asexual, right? Some asexuals do have sex because they don't fear intimacy. They are open to having sex. Other asexuals that are sexual repulsed like me, it's not because I fear intimacy, because if I feared intimacy, I wouldn't want to hold the guy's hand, I wouldn't want to kiss him, I wouldn't want to cuddle him, I wouldn't want to be open to having an emotional connection with him, I wouldn't want to open up about my feelings and my needs, I'd be closed off about all that. But because I know I'm open in all those ways, probably sometimes too open for my own good sometimes, which, is not necessarily good in early dating, which I probably have to hone in a bit. But I'm probably too intimate sometimes. I probably give too much away in the beginning, if you like. But I love being my authentic self, and I'm used to sharing, right? And so you've got to ask yourself, what is the reasoning behind why you don't want intimacy? If there's a pattern where it's like, I'm closed off to talking about people to do with my needs, I keep surface level conversations going because I don't want to get hurt, I don't want to be physically touched by someone because I'm worried that they might leave me after that, and that wouldn't be good. These are all fears of intimacy rather than asexuality, right? Because if your only reason you're not being physical with someone is because you're worried someone might leave you, that's still a valid reason to have a fear of intimacy, right? But it's not that you're asexual and that fear, the intimacy is to do with a lack of sexual attraction. It's to do with the fact you have a fear around physical intimacy because you're worried about rejection, rather than saying, I'm just not interested in having sex because I don't experience sexual attraction. It's just a turn off for me having sex or thinking about the idea of having sex when I'm not actually physically, wanting that, right? My mind doesn't want it, my soul doesn't want it, my body doesn't want it. I'm just not into sex, right? That would be asexuality usually, right? But a fear of intimacy, if it comes from an avoidancy place, which I think there are some people who are avoidant that may not be admitting to themselves that's the reason of their fear of intimacy, then I think that needs to be addressed through, for example, a therapist or even a coach that can look at your attachment style and help you, right? I know for a fact that if I wanted to have sex again, I could, but I'm just so sex repulsed these days, and I don't even like taking my clothes off in front of a guy because I'm very nudity repulsed, and I'm thinking, well, I don't really like him seeing me naked. It doesn't feel good. It feels very icky to me, right? But I'm fine to be kissing him. I'm fine to be cuddling him. I'm fine to have my hold his hand. I'm fine to be on top kissing him, physically close proximity to him. You know, obviously it depends how serious the guy is about me. I'd be a lot more comfortable doing more physical, intimate stuff without a sex in a serious committed relationship than just having a date with a guy. Do you know what I mean? You've got limits even as an asexual person as to how much intimacy. And you don't want to just like, I'm not saying don't ever go on a date and like, oh, you should be intimate with a person straight away physically. That's not what I'm saying. We all should be have a discernment about us and have a fear of you know, a healthy fear of like, well, I don't know who this person is. I need to protect myself and my safety because the guy could be a psychopath if you're only just going on a date with him or whatever gender you want. And so you have to have a discernment, like saying, well, now's not the time to be intimate. Because intimacy, in terms of physical intimacy, can make you feel very unsafe. You have to be very safe with the person before you're having physical intimacy, or at least feel comfortable enough. This goes for emotional intimacy too. You don't have to feel like you need to open up to a person fully straight away, but you have to be somewhat open. You can't go dating and just have surface level conversations going, hey, how are you? I'm good, thanks. How are you? How is the weather today? Oh, the weather's good. Oh, right, yeah, it's nice and sunny. Yes, so it is. This usually is avoidancy tendencies when you're talking about generalizations and you're not wanting to dive deep into feelings. So if you are friends with someone and you've got a real problem with them sharing their feelings because it makes you on edge and it makes you feel like, oh, I can't deal with that. That's usually avoidancy tendencies, right? So you really have to become self-aware and analyze as to how you feel about intimacy and why you feel like that. Is there patterns in your childhood or relationships where maybe you were okay with intimacy and then all of a sudden someone did something, dismissed you, got angry with you, shouted at you, and then you're like, oh no, I can't do that ever again, because if I do, I'll get trapped like this, and that just stops you from doing it. So if that's the case, you're free in intimacy for legitimate reasons, but it's more a fear of intimacy, right? Of course, there's going to be asexuals that have fears of intimacy. For example, emotional connection, if they're avoidant attachment, plus they could still be sex repulsed asexual, and they're afraid of they're afraid of like having sex, not because of the sex itself, but because they don't experience sexual attraction. But you've got to be careful. Is it avoidancy of physical intimacy or is it asexuality? Ask yourself, if I wasn't afraid of physical intimacy, would I be having sex? As opposed to, I just don't experience sexual attraction. If you're not having sex because you're worried you're going to get emotionally hurt or too invested in the person, you know, there's still good reasons to like understand why you've got a fear of intimacy. But if that's your reason for not having sex and being emotionally intimate, mentally intimate, then you know that's coming from a place of fear of intimacy rather than asexuality, right? So always examine this. Now, I want to take you to a program, right, that I saw on YouTube, which is a daytime program in the UK, a morning program actually. And it's got two people in this, right? And these people are from a TV show. So it's called Meet the Virgins, Looking for Love and Overcoming Intimacy Fears. This morning, this is the program it's on in the UK. Now I'm going to show you clips from this as we go along. It's about a 10-minute video, but I'm going to be commenting in between on them, right? So let's flip you around and let's start the show, right? So now I'm going to switch you over to viewing this so you can understand what's going on, because I want to discuss this. This is called Meet the Virgins, Looking for Love and Overcoming Intimacy Fears this morning, right? I want to talk about some of this stuff, right?
And two of the virgins, Jason and Taylor, are with us now this morning. We've been chatting about it already, haven't we? It looked like a gorgeous place, by the way.
It was stunning.
Absolutely beautiful. Taylor, so why did you choose to do it? Because, as Ben has said, it's a really brave move, actually.
Yeah, well, I saw it on TikTok, actually. There was a comedian kind of taking the mick out of it, and I was like, no way. So I looked into it and...
So these two people were on a TV program and they had a fear of intimacy, and they went on the program to overcome their fear of intimacy, and they actually wanted to have sex. So I'm going to be commenting more in a minute.
I was like, oh, there's a show for virgins. And I was speaking to it with a colleague at work, and she was like, you should totally apply. And I said, no, but ended up looking at it and kind of treated the application process as a mini therapy session by itself and just really spilt my guts, thinking that I would never get called back.
Right.
And then they did contact me and it was so fast. And then everything's kind of happening, and then you end up on the island and you're still like reeling, going, how did this happen? But yeah, I was kind of at the point where I felt like I'd tried everything and had kind of just gone, right, I'm too scared, just give up. And like this came as a really good opportunity for me.
Yeah.
So it was a mixture of bad experiences along the way and fear that had meant you'd got to the age of 30 and you hadn't had a chance to lose your virginity. And then it would become a bigger thing than it probably ever should have been.
Honestly, it gets bigger and bigger as you get older, especially because you start off as a teenager and like some people haven't, some people have. Then you get to your mid-20s and some people are like really weird about it. And then you get to your 30s and they're like, we've given up on you. Like they start making films about you. Then
and you'd almost given up on yourself as well. I mean, you said you'd kind of gone, well, that's it. I'm not. I am happy with the way I am and I'm a full person without all of this. But it was such a shame that like it's just something that I didn't have that everyone else did.
Yeah.
So I want to stop it there because this is really important. Like saying, you know, they haven't got something that everyone else has, right? You have to understand that just because society dictates that we're meant to have sex doesn't mean to say you're missing out on life or anything if you don't have sex, right? The fact that this person felt like something's missing because they've got to be in their 30s and they haven't had sex, to me raises a little bit of alarm bells. It's like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but why is the focus so much on the fact you haven't had sex rather than the fact you haven't had a relationship where you felt safe enough to have sex? What's going on in your mind and what's going on in that relationship dynamic? Like, what is happening for you on the inside, which is making you feel like you can't actually get a relationship to have sex if that's what you want, rather than the fact of, oh, I haven't had sex. Everyone's like kind of like talking about it and everyone's had it and I haven't. You know, to me, this is coming from more of an unhealthy place. Like they say, they have a fear of intimacy, right? Then obviously not asexual. They're not saying they're asexual, but I'm putting it in this video because I want to draw your attention to it, because a lot of asexuals feel, oh my God, everyone's like thinking I'm broken if I haven't had sex. Everyone's like saying things and everyone's like, you know, having weird behavior around me, like, oh, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to get married? When are you, you know, like going to do it? Or this guy's so hot and this girl's so hot. And there's a huge peer pressure to be able to like push yourself into having sex if you haven't had it by a certain age. And I just think this is so wrong, right? Obviously, she's been brave by going on this show. She's come to the conclusion that she wants that. So that's why she's gone on the show. But the fact that people have made fun of her and made her feel bad by not having sex has obviously planted in her brain that she should have it, because she's drawn references to those things happening in her life. People talking about it, about her, making videos about it, she said. Right? Like, God knows why someone would have the mentality to make a video about why someone doesn't want to have sex or someone hasn't had sex in their 30s. What mental place would that person be in to create videos and basically make fun of someone else or highlight the fact that someone else hasn't had sex? What business is it of theirs? It's got nothing to do with them. So it does worry me for her that this is coming from a place of other people making it feel like she's missing out if she doesn't have sex. There are lots of virgins in the asexual community, and you're perfectly fine to be a virgin for life. You don't have to give your virginity away. In fact, it's such a precious thing to keep that for yourself. I'm not a virgin, as I said, even though I'm asexual, but it's so important that if you want to keep that for yourself, you keep it for yourself. There's no like golden medal to be won by, oh, I've had sex now, so I've lost my virginity. Do you know what I mean? I don't like this. I don't like the fact of it's coming from a place of not of like working on herself to improve how she is in relationships and possible dating scenarios so she could be getting that intimacy in that situation. I feel that maybe this person is more avoidant. I don't know this about her because I haven't watched the show, but it could be that she's more avoidant and needs to work on her avoidancy and avoidance attachment styles, or, you know, you can get it if you're anxious attachment. So I think this would be a better focus of her time and more productive use of her time to actually find out more the reasoning behind her fear of intimacy. I mean, they said about experiences, but if she's never had sex before, like, what experience has gone on to make her feel that way? And obviously they are being honest that it's experiences that have caused their fear of intimacy with these two people. It's not that they're asexual or something like that, which I think is really good. But I still think it's important for asexuals to know you're okay, you're not broken. Even if someone takes a mickey out of you for not having sex, it's your body, it's your life, and you don't have to do that to prove anything to anyone. I want to make that perfectly clear, right? You don't owe anyone anything. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. And some people might not have sex till they're 50 or something. It doesn't matter, does it? Right? You know, 30 is still really young. I like a lot of younger guys, as you know, guys in their early to mid-20s predominantly. And some of them, they haven't even had a kiss, let alone had sex. And I'm like, fine with that. I don't have a problem with that, because some people might be like, oh, I can't get a relationship because I've never had sex before in my life, or I've never even kissed. So what? The right person for you won't care about that. They'll probably think it's a good thing that you come with less baggage. You've got less experience, so you can find your ways together and what's the best kissing position for you. Or if you're an asexual that does have sex, what's the best, like, sexual things you like together? You can explore that together and grow together in your own intimacy, because every relationship is different. And when you're intimate with one person, it might be very different with other people. I'm intimate with you right now, but I'm not going around snogging you, am I? Do you know what I'm saying? There's different forms of intimacy. Intimacy, sharing secrets, talking in a way that I'm sharing my feelings and thoughts and emotions with you, and I'm bringing you into the conversation. I want you to be here. I'm present with you, right? This is a form of forms of intimacy. So don't be afraid if you've never had sex before. I don't want this program to steer your brain into, oh my God, I haven't had sex, I'm in a panic, right? If you haven't had sex and you're a virgin, there's no problem with being a virgin. You can be a virgin forever, and it's great. I do know some asexuals I've come across, though, especially on the asexual grey end of the asexual spectrum, who still want sex, and they don't want to die a virgin without it. Personally, as a sex-repulsed asexual, for me, I don't really understand that totally, because I'm like, okay, you're a grey asexual, you're like, you know, a grey asexual is someone who experiences sexual attraction, but only under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or infrequently. But it's hard when I'm looking for a guy and they're like, oh, but I do want sex, even though I'm a grey asexual. And I'm thinking, well, those people are out because I don't want sex, right? So you have to understand that some people who are in the asexual community, they do actually still want sex. So when you are dating an asexual person or looking to get into a relationship with an asexual person, if you're asexual yourself, for example, then you still need to make sure that that person is on the same page as you, to do with intimacy and also to do with sex or not, right? I personally need a very, very open, honest and openly communicative person. The best type of guy for me would be one who's very expressive, a sensitive guy, an empathetic guy, someone who really is good at self-expression and very open about talking about his feelings and emotions and stuff like that, and also providing a safe space for me to share those things as well, and who will hold a space for me to share my emotions and work in that emotion with him. Obviously, you can't make another person responsible for your emotions. That's what I'm not saying that, right? I want to make that clear. Like, if you're having a really bad day, you should be able to talk to your partner about it, and maybe, you know, like, talk through how something made you feel. But obviously you can't be miserable all the time and say, oh, my partner won't listen to me, so that's their responsibility, that's why I'm so miserable, right? But you've got to have a partner who's listening and attentive and can hold space, especially if you're going through a lot of difficulties, right? You want to be able to have a partner that you can say, hey, like, I had a really bad day at the office today, this person was just having a go at me, I felt I'd done my best, and they were just going on and on for half an hour, and your partner should be able to say, oh, you know, I'm really sorry to hear that, like, how did that make you feel? Well, I felt tense in my chest, I felt really upset, I'd done my best, I was struggling, and I just wanted to break, really. I just wanted to get out of there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that must be so claustrophobic for you, being in an office like that, being pulled into the office and having someone basically shout at you when you felt you were doing your best. It's very dismissive, and I can understand how much that would hurt you. And the other person's like, yeah, I felt really hurt and frustrated and not understood and felt really put down and felt like they didn't value me. And then the other person would go, I'm really sorry you felt that way. Like, if there's anything I can do to help you right now, if you just want me to sit here and chat through your emotions and feelings with you, then I'm happy to do that. A lot of people are avoidant, for example, avoidant of intimacy. They don't want to talk about emotions, right? You can't have a healthy relationship that's very functional and good if people don't want to like hold a space for you and talk through your emotions if you're going through difficult things. If they want to avoid them the whole time and you've had a bad day at the office, you're going to be like, oh, I had this really bad day at the office and I feel loads of pressure and stress from it. Yeah, I come home and my partner doesn't even want to hear it and they just want to avoid it. That means that person is repressing and suppressing their emotions and holding it all in. And it's almost like the other person is ignoring that and it isn't willing to actually hear you out. And then you're left feeling, well, who can I talk to about this? I should be able to rely on my partner to a certain extent, not go on and on, just trauma dump on them all the time and say everything bad all the time and make them depressed. That's not what I'm talking about. But you should be able to like share that with your partner, especially when you're going through difficult times. Do you know what I mean? So I really need to talk to you. And the person should be like, tell me how you feel. They should, a form of intimacy is asking the person, like, how do they feel? Like, how is that for you? Right? If you asking someone how they feel and they go, I'm fine, thanks. That's really them just avoiding it. They're avoiding an intimate conversation with you and they're avoiding the topic of conversation because it causes them pain. Right? A lot of people that are void of emotions or that don't want to address their own emotions, they won't want to usually sit in your pain with you, with your emotions, because it makes them uncomfortable. And that is a fear of intimacy. It's a fear of emotional intimacy in relationships, could be friendships, family, situationships, whatever you want to say, right? So you've got to be very, very careful of these things, right? Because in order to have healthy relationships, whatever sexual orientation you are, you've got to have a person who's willing to be open and honest, and who both people have got to work on themselves so that you can foster intimacy in a healthy way with each other and hold space for each other. So, you know, relationships are very difficult, right? We've all got our own difficulties in relationships, but I hope this video is helpful for you. Let's get on with this show so I can comment a bit more on it for you. So in the chat, I just want to go to someone in chat. I really don't want to have a sexual encounter with any. I'm attracted to no one or of any gender. I don't know what it means, but I'm really okay with it. That's good. Yeah, so if you lack sexual attraction and you don't want to have sexual encounter with anyone because you don't feel attracted to anyone that way, and that's why you don't want that sexual encounter because you just don't experience attraction, it puts you off people, then that's likely more to do with asexuality. But, you know, that's fine. So you just got to examine, like, why you don't want sexual encounters. If it's because you don't experience sexual attraction and that turns you off from people, then you class yourself as asexual, then that's fine, right? So you shouldn't push yourself to be intimate with people or a person when you don't want to be. I'll make that clear right now. That's why I find it hard, because this girl, I feel, is wanting to have sex because her friends have drawn attention to the fact she's in her 30s and she's never had sex. I don't think that's a good reason to go and like push yourself to have sex with people. But there we go. Anyway, let's crack on.
And Jason, you went in there, you seemed to have a real problem when you started to watch the show about intimacy and any form of kind of touch. Absolutely. Really.
I couldn't do any touching. The handshake, I didn't think a handshake was that hard, but intense.
Oops. Whoops. Right. We got a pigeon, a funky pigeon I was going to call it, but it's not funky pigeon, is it? Right. Right, I want to stop it there because some asexuals are touch averse, right? What this means is they don't want to be touched on the arm. They don't want to be, even a pat on the shoulder might make them feel jumpy or strange, right? Now, this is not necessarily because of their asexuality, but it also could be. Because some asexuals are autistic, for example, and they have problems with sensory things. To be touched can cause them sensory issues. They can get something called sensory overload as well. That's why for some autistic people, sexual relationships aren't good, because it can provide too much sensory overload, which is something that's not really talked about much online or anywhere, right? But you can get that, right? So some people are autistic, like sex. Other people are autistic, don't. You can get some people are asexual and autistic, and people that are not asexual but autistic. But autism is something that could cause you a repulsion to being touched, because, like I said, it's a sensory overload. So when you are analysing, does your touch aversion come from an intimacy difficulty due to maybe you've had an abusive relationship, or maybe you've had emotional neglect in childhood where your family didn't hug you or touch you very much, you know, they didn't cuddle you, they didn't make you feel loved physically, then, you know, you've got to analyse that. But bear in mind that asexuals can still have had these experiences, but that's not necessarily why they're touch averse, right? Because there can be tons of different reasons. Like some asexuals who don't experience any sexual attraction might just think that because they're repulsed by a lack of sexual attraction, they don't want to touch another person's body because they lack sexual attraction. Therefore, they want to avoid that and they feel horrible about it. I used to have a problem with hugging anyone outside of a romantic relationship. I only used to hug my parents once to say goodbye. That was it. And that is because in my family, growing up, we weren't huggers. Like my family, my parents weren't used to hugging me. They weren't really those touchy, feely, huggy types, like in a parental way. I'm talking about, not talking about like a disgusting way, right? Because obviously there's some parents who abuse their children by being too physical with them, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just like hugging you when you're feeling upset, for example, as a child. And things like that. My parents weren't like that with me. I'm not going to go into all the details about my parents because it's private, right? But I'm just saying that's the type of background I come from. And usually we hug just to say goodbye, like even with my grandparents. I guess I probably hugged them to say hello and goodbye, my grandparents, because they're not here anymore on planet Earth. But, you know, I didn't used to see them for ages. We didn't live together. Although at one point I think they lived a bit in my spare room with my parents for some time, when they stayed down for a while, because they used to be up north. So what I'm saying is I come from a background where, you know, like hugging and that wasn't really a thing. So I had a problem with people touching my arms and stuff who I didn't know. I think now there's certain circumstances where I probably don't like that as much. If this guy who I feels a bit creepy, for example, but in general, I'm okay hugging strangers now, right? I changed this, right? So in 2012, I went to a Tony Robbins event. Tony Robbins is the world's like biggest coach, right? Life coach. You can Google him, Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins. And I went to this event in London and I saw him there, and he got us to get up in the audience and to go around hugging other audience members that were complete strangers to us, right? This was way out of my comfort zone. This was something I would never usually do. This was something I was not used to doing. But I realised that I did have a big issue with not wanting to have any physical intimacy with anyone other than a partner in a relationship. But the reason why I kind of wanted to change this is because it was quite common and normal for many people to hug people. And if I got into a relationship with a guy, then I saw him like hugging his mum or I saw him hugging his sister, I might feel like, oh, that's not right. That's weird. And I don't like that about him. And I don't feel good when he's doing that. I feel like a bit betrayed or something. This is my psychology being unhealthy years ago. But because now I hug strangers myself, and because I can hug people of the opposite gender myself without it being romantic, then I'm able to understand that a guy might want to do that. Obviously, I think there's got to be boundaries in place, and you've got to look at the way they're hugging someone. But in general, I can go around hugging people I don't know that well, or I don't know at all. But this has actually helped me to help others, right? For example, in one of my old jobs, there was a woman whose husband had cancer and he was diagnosed with it. She was in the toilet crying. And I was able to reach out and give her a hug when she needed it the most. I wouldn't have been able to do that years ago until 2012. Because when I had to get up and hug strangers, I did do it. It got me out of my comfort zone. And I still was not used to doing that. But I got used to it more and more when I allowed myself to do it and think, I've got to practice this. If you want to change yourself in any way, you have to practice a new belief or practice a new practice doing a different thing over and over again, repeating it so it becomes like second nature to you. This is how you change patterns of behavior in your life. This is how you change your mannerisms. If someone says, oh, I can never change on anything, this is just a load of rubbish, right? Everyone has the power to change some things. They're not going to change everything about themselves. They might only make small shifts in their life. But if anyone says I can never change about anything, it's just not true. It's like means they're not willing to change. They don't think anything's wrong with them, and they think they can never improve. Well, anyone can improve. I'm in the Love Life Club, Matthew Hussey's Love Life Club. I've gone into the 2nd year in that. Why? Because I feel I can still improve myself. I feel I can be a better communicator. I feel I can still work on expressing my needs better in friendships, etc. Right? I still have work to do on myself. The work really never stops if you want to keep becoming a better version of yourself and learn how to interact with people better, right? Because obviously I have to interact with different people from different attachment styles. So that aren't my own. So they kind of like avoidant and anxious attachy people kind of work the opposite way. But most of the people in my life, I think, have avoidancy tendencies. So I kind of have to get used to that and navigate that, you know. But if two people, even if you're different attachment styles, are willing to both work on their own individual attachment style to come together in the middle, then you can have much healthier relationships. Even avoidance and anxiously attached people can have more healthier relationship dynamics when they come together. The anxiously attached person realizes the avoidant needs space, and they still got to state their needs as well as giving them space. And then the avoidant realizes that the anxiously attached person does need some more quality time with them, and maybe some more intimacy, you know, in certain situations particularly, and wants to share their feelings more. So it requires both people listening to each other and adapting to each other, right? So it's a lot of work. All relationships are work, right? And everything is working on yourself, right? Your whole life, you continually work on the person you're with 24/7 a day, 24/7, 365 days a year. That's what I was going to say. So let's get back to the show. But remember, I just was going through how I've changed myself, because I did have a fear of being touched, right? But I didn't have that fear in relationships. I had no fear of my past ex-boyfriends touching me, kissing me. Years ago, when I used to have sex, I used to be fully naked. And I mean, sometimes I had a problem with them touching my top bit. Sometimes I would feel like okay about that. Other times I wouldn't like that. So it depends what mood I felt in for that, to be honest. But that's just a personal preference of the guy touching me, that I don't like it. That was because of my asexuality that I didn't realise at the time. Because it wasn't like I couldn't do that. It wasn't like I couldn't be okay with that. It was just that I didn't really like it sometimes. It felt like, oh, didn't feel too good for me. Probably because I'm quite sensitive in certain body parts. And sometimes it's a sensitivity in a good way of body parts. Other times it's a sensitivity of like, oh, that didn't really feel good. It kind of felt like it was grating on me. Do you know what I mean? So I think you have to assess, but you know what I mean? I have been in those situations where I've been really intimate with a guy, and it's not the fact that I can't be intimate again and that I'm fearing that. I have a fear of guys who would, well, years ago, when I first discovered I'm asexual, I used to have a fear of dating guys in terms of them wanting sex at the end of the night. And I think it's good to be wise about that, because there are some guys that will try and have sex with you and that will push for that, right? So I think that's a genuine, legitimate fear when you don't know someone and you're going on a date with someone. So make sure you have a date in a public place. Make sure you video call them first. Be careful, be in a public place. Don't let them go back to your place, like on the first date, for example. These are natural fears. But a fear of intimacy is when, you know, something outside of the normal fears stops you being intimate. Does that make sense? So let's progress with this show so we can talk some more about it.
That come from?
I don't know. Like, my family would never hug us.
Right.
Like, my granddad would give me like, I don't know, like, maybe like that. I can't give you like a handshake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't do it myself.
Like,
but I don't know. Whenever someone's ever tried to hug me, I feel like, oh, I'm getting suffocated. I don't like that. And just don't touch me, keep a distance, like social distancing. COVID was great for me. Do you know what I mean? It was great. I was like 6 feet, yeah, amazing. But I didn't want to always be like that. I wanted to one day meet a woman and I was just like, not just a handshake, like a hug and just feel great, but not just in a romantic way either, like just hugging my mum. Like,
because you didn't hug your mum, did you?
No.
And that you weren't a huggy family at all.
Not at all, not at all. But it was her 50th the other day, and hello, Mum. But no, Mum, so we hugged, and it was great. And
how has she found that? Has she enjoyed being able to hug you as well and being able to share that?
She's still a bit on edge about hugging still, but she's a lot older than me, but not a lot older, sorry. You kill me now. But I feel like with hugging, she's set in her ways about not wanting to hug, but she has started hugging, and it's nice to see.
Makes a difference.
For me, it feels so great now. It feels so natural. Like, can I hug you?
Yeah.
So they consent as well.
Yeah.
You like that was drilled in.
But it was lovely actually to see even on the island, like you first of all put your hand on someone's knee and then hold their hand too. And the therapist seemed really kind too.
All the therapists, you can't knock them, even if you tried. They're so amazing. And we were definitely thrown in the deep end, but they were there to guide us, and they truly did guide us. And I can't spoil anything, but...
So I find it weird that they've got therapists who are going around allowing the person to touch them. Now, I do find this weird because for me, a boundary would be a therapist would not normally go around doing this physical touch stuff, but it seems like these are specialist therapists that work on intimacy with people, and they start talking about surrogates soon in this. So, I mean, she is dressed a little bit like sexy, isn't she, for people who are into that? Because obviously there's a low-cut top showing her flesh off a bit. Do you know what I mean? So I think I understand what's going on here. You know, in order to have someone overcome their fears, they really have to be tackling the thing head on that they're fearful of in a safe, controlled environment. It's really important to do that so that you feel safe, unjudged, you're able to take things slow. And I do think this is a huge benefit. And I think there's some kind of like benefit to this, but I do find it weird that a therapist is trained to do this stuff, whereas I thought personal boundaries certainly included physical stuff. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, this is the program on TV, right? So if you look at it down here, you know, this is this morning program, but it says that this pair, along with 10 other virgins, are teaming up with some of the world's leading experts to get them feeling confident in the bedroom. They're here to tell us about how the experience changed them forever and whether they've since managed a bit of how's your father, sex in other words. So Taylor is 30-year-old virgin, and Jason, this person, is 26, who was so scared of intimacy he couldn't even hug his mum. But I mean, 26 is not, you know, or even 30 to not have sex. It's just like, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. But I understand that if you have got concerns and you feel that you're not living your fullest life because you want to be able to do these things, it's important to get the skills to be able to do them. I mean, asexuals who are okay to have sex can learn the skills to have sex if they want. Just because you're not naturally inclined to know about sex doesn't mean to say you can't learn sex as a skill. Obviously, if you're repulsed by sex, don't want anything to do, it makes you nearly throw up, which some asexuals do actually throw up if they have sex and stuff like that, then, you know, you don't want to be doing it. But if you're okay to try it, then sex is a skill that can be learned by anyone, regardless of sexual orientation, because it's just like, do this, do that, and the other. Do you know what I mean? But that's not necessarily intimacy, right? Because talking about your feelings, emotions is like whilst you're having sexual intercourse, doing sexual stuff, you really need a lot of communication skills, a lot of good communication skills in order to stay safe and for the other person to understand what you like and don't like.
I know I was there, but I know it's going to get a lot better, and some people are going to shock you. Yeah. Can't say who, but it's going to shock you.
But it is an extraordinary thing, though, Taylor, because we watch you, and these are very personal, intimate things you're sharing, and even the slightest suggestion that someone's going to come close to you, you break down in tears. You were so emotionally sort of caught up in what was going on?
So I was like, I'm fine with hugging my friends and I'm very tactile with my friends and my family, but it was a case of, it was the act of being desired that made me really, it kind of put the fear in me, and I'd freeze up and I'd start feel like, you know, choking.
Right, so I think this is really important, right? So some asexuals don't like being desired. So again, you've got to analyze why that is. Like, why do you have a fear of being desired? Is it because you feel creepy that someone's sexually attracted to you because you don't like sex? You don't want it, you don't need it, you don't experience sexual attraction? Or is it because you have an attachment style that makes you feel like you're unlovable, undesirable, unwanted, unneeded, for example, from childhood or previous past relationship experiences? Because if it's the latter, then you're likely to just have a fear of intimacy rather than being asexual. But if it's the former, then you're more likely to be asexual. Obviously, someone who's asexual can still have these difficulties as well. But a strong sign it's an intimacy problem is when your desire to not be intimate with someone results from past bad experiences, rather than just because you don't experience sexual attraction, or you don't experience it in the usual way that other people would if you're grey asexual, for example. So everyone's valid, right? Everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own life and background. For me, personally, I was the opposite to this girl. I had no fear of being, years ago, intimate with a heterosexual guy, right? I have some fears now in the sense that I have no fear in, like, I can go and date heterosexuals again, but obviously there is a kind of like fear or difficulty when some heterosexual guys, they really want to push you to do more and more physical stuff. And then it does make you more, I'd say it's more anxiety than fear. It's because you don't, if you're a sexual pulse asexual like me, you naturally don't want them to touch you in places that you don't want to be touched. This is a natural thing. This is about boundaries. This is not a fear of intimacy. This is having important safety boundaries in a relationship, right? You need boundaries. You need to be able to tell them, I like this. You can touch me here, but I don't want to be touched there, right? If they're not happy with your boundaries, if they're someone who needs a lot more sexual contact in places you're not comfortable with, then that person's not suitable for you, right? So always assess what is the reasoning behind why you don't want to do that intimate thing. But like I said, I was the opposite. I used to be fine in a relationship. I used to have sex years ago, although I'd rather not have bothered, and I didn't have sex as much as a lot of people would have done. I just really wanted the kissing and stuff like that, right? But I was fine with doing all that physical stuff, but not to hug people outside of that situation, other than, like I said, my parents to say goodbye. I had a real kind of like fear and repulsion to having any contact. Nowadays, I don't, because I'm only attracted to younger guys, not usually guys anywhere near my birth certificate age or older. I don't like to be touched by older guys if it's in certain settings. Like, I'm okay hugging older guys a bit, like to say hello and goodbye if I get on well with them, if I feel comfortable enough around them. But in general, I don't or can't be physically intimate with an older guy or a guy anywhere near my birth certificate because I just don't relate to them and I don't feel comfortable. I feel like, because I've changed my mindset to be like 21 years old in using NLP, I feel like a guy, for example, in his 50s, which would be way too old for me, older than, I'm under 50, by the way, that would just be like dating my dad in my mind, right? Because it's like, I'm such a young soul and like young things. It would be like, in my mind, it'd be like, and in my feelings, it'd be like he was 20 years older than me, even if he might not be 20 years actually older than me in birth certificate age, right? There's a big difference between me and that age and the way people look as well. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, if a guy looked really, really young for his age and he was in his 30s, for example, that might be okay. but do you know what I mean? I don't like beards. I like really young facial features and stuff like that because I don't feel comfortable being physically around older guys usually. But it's interesting because when I was younger in birth certificate age, I used to want to have a boyfriend that was same age as me or older. So I've changed on that. And I think this is more of a, I just don't feel comfortable around an older guy, right? I try to kind of more like force myself to like older guys or guys near my birth certificate age just because that's what society dictates. that is not right to do that, right? But because I like younger guys, I feel a lot more comfortable around them. I feel more comfortable like kissing, cuddling them, holding their hand and stuff like that. Because I just feel that that's the age group I'm meant to be with. I feel a lot more comfortable about a younger guy like being physically close to me. Do you know what I mean? I just feel that. And I think it's, you know, I'm an asexual cougar, if you like, not a sexual one. And I think there are obviously people in the world where some guys who just really attracted to older women and a person who's like their own age, they wouldn't feel comfortable being in a dating or relationship scenario with that person because they feel like, well, you're just my mate. I can't have those feelings for you. And I kind of like that with older guys. I just can't think of an older guy in a relationship with me. It'd be kind of weird. I have dated years ago. I dated a heterosexual guy who was older than me in birth certificate age, and that felt weird. He was a few years, and he was just like, he looked younger than he was, but he was highly heterosexual and not good for me. I found out he was not honest either. He was psychopathic. I've told you the story of this before. If you watch my channel, I mean, a real life psychopath. I'm not being horrible to him when I say that. We went away together, and literally the nightclub security people, unbeknown to me, confiscated a blade he had on him. And they said, if you ever come in here with a blade ever again, we will literally call the police. And I never knew this. And I'm like, who are you going to kill with that? And he was like, not you. You know, this is serious shit. I'm talking about stuff that you would more likely think would be on TV show. Obviously, I'm not seeing that guy anymore. When I got back home safely, I had to like stop seeing him. But it was one of the most frightening times in my life. So you have to be very, very careful about who you date. I've been dating him for like 3 months or something at that point. I think it was, you know, and I didn't know this about him. So anyway, you got to be very, very careful. And so, you know, there can be genuine fears and anxieties there to protect you, right? Don't ever think you can't have anxieties about intimacy because it's normal and natural, especially with people you don't know. But you have to say, do you have a fear of intimacy because you just have had bad experiences all your life and that's what put you off, or because you just don't feel attraction, therefore you know you're not interested. I don't get attracted to older guys usually. So that for me, not having attraction to them in any way, shape or form means I'm not wanting to be physically intimate with them. Right? Because I'm not aesthetically attracted to them. I'm not romantically attracted to them. I'm not intellectually attracted to them, even if I can appreciate they have some wisdom to share. I don't think of them in an attraction way. Whereas with younger guys, you know, I like younger foreign guys on this channel. If you watched it for ages, then you know I like their mindset. I like their looks. I like their hair. I like their, you know, like the fact they're younger. And they're more on my wavelength and they're more like my energy level. And they often are like studying, for example, developing themselves, growing themselves. And I'm at my life stage where I also grow myself and do personal development, but in an online way rather than a uni way. Do you know what I mean? So we're kind of at the same level in that respect. And, you know, I just like being physically close to the right younger guy, for example. Whereas an older guy don't have attractions, but younger guys can have a lot of attractions. You know, like I can have up to 8 attractions. I was having someone in Love Life Club personally messaging me, asking me about asexuality, because they'd never heard of it before. And on my profile in the Love Life Club, I talk about being asexual and that I have this channel where I help people with love life, confidence, dating and relationships, self-love and self-care. So he started asking me, and then I said about... because he didn't understand about asexuality. I don't experience sexual attraction, but I still have attractions. I said I have up to 8 attractions. So he's like, oh, what are they 8? So I sent him a copy of my video saying, watch this, because these show the 8 asexual attractions. So, for example, I have aesthetic attraction, romantic attraction, creative attraction, clothes attraction, spiritual attraction, emotional attraction. These are some of the attractions I have. Sensual attraction with a guy's upper body, these type of things, right? So it's important to understand attraction and how that plays a part in physical closeness and intimacy. If you are not attracted in any way, shape or form to someone, even if it's their personality, you're not that attracted to their personality, for example, you probably won't want to be intimate with them. That's normal, right? I mean, but you could really, some pan-romantic people, right, or pansexual even, they can be attracted to someone based on a person's personality more than their physicality. because they're not interested in gender, they're interested in the person's personality a lot more, right? So remember that attraction plays a part, and who you're attracted to and what gender you're attracted to plays a part in whether you want to be intimate with someone or not, and how much by, right? If I'm really highly aesthetically attracted to a guy and romantically attracted to him, then yeah, I if he's the right looking guy, then I want to kiss him. I want to hold his hand. I want to cuddle him. I mean, you know what I'm like. I'm a hyper romantic though, and a hyper kisser, which is quite rare for anyone, let alone asexuals, who a lot of asexuals don't want that much kissing. Do you know what I mean? But some asexuals really crave like a lot of hugs and cuddles. Despite being asexual, they require a lot of physical contact. So some asexuals, the opposite. Some asexuals love physical contact. They miss the hugging and cuddling of a relationship. They miss being held close tenderly. They miss the holding hands. They miss the physical and mental, emotional intimacy. If they broke up from someone, for example, say they had a relationship with someone who ended up being not compatible for them, and they haven't had a hug in ages, they haven't been held in ages. For some asexuals, that can be so important, and it can be so disheartening when they just haven't had this experience for ages. So just understand there are a lot of asexuals that don't fear intimacy. They're just, you know, not interested, for example, in having sex, or they lack sexual attraction. It's not really their main thing. It's not really their main interest, but they still like other forms of intimacy. They like emotional intimacy, physical touch, someone being there for them as their bestest friend, talking about the ups and downs of life together, going through the ups and downs of life together, having companionship, all this type of thing. So don't think that asexuality is synonymous with a fear of intimacy or having intimacy problems. I have to make that perfectly clear, because it's not, right? I don't have a fear of being intimate. I have a fear, obviously, of dating a heterosexual guy that might try it on and push me more than I should. But a lot of the time I have very strict boundaries these days. So guys tend to not do that. I'm not saying every guy doesn't do that, because some guys will do stuff they shouldn't do, right? But in the main, like I was, as you know, in a relationship last year with a heterosexual guy. And it was good for the most part physically. But, you know, there was times where I felt like he's just going too far, a bit too far, you know. I had to keep saying to him, like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't feel comfortable. And he actually made me feel bad, because I felt like I can't be as intimate with him physically as he would probably like. But he was actually quite good about that. He was like, oh, it's fine. You know, I want you to feel okay. So the rest of the relationship in the end wasn't good, but actually the physicality stuff overall was quite good. But you know what I mean? But you know, when you're in a relationship and you're with a heterosexual person, if you're asexual, and they're kind of like pushing you a bit more, or their hands are wandering a bit more, and then you have to constantly remind them, look, I am asexual, and you know, I'm enjoying this intimacy, I'm enjoying the kissing and cuddling, but I don't want the rest of this stuff, right? That is quite hard. Right? It's quite hard to sustain that. It's better if you can find someone, ideally, who's asexual themselves, or who's really good with your boundaries and who'll understand, yes, you don't want to be touched there. That's off limits. You're fine about it. But when you've got a guy whose hand might be creeping a little bit up the back or bum area or round the front area, and it's just a bit too much, a lot of that can start making your nervous system very anxious. Because I just don't like a guy all over my breasts and touching me and stuff these days. I've been like this for years now. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I did want it, I would have it. You know what I mean? But I just not really into all this, like, especially my top half. I'm more like not wanting to be touched on the top half than the bottom half for some reason. It's just the way I am, right? And it's like, I don't really want that, you know? Just, it doesn't feel good to me. It feels like these are mine. Leave them alone. Do you know what I mean? So we all have our own natural ways of being and what feels good to us and what doesn't feel good to us. It's not that I fear intimacy, in sense I've done all that before. It's just I'm not interested. I don't feel good about him doing that, right? It's my boundary. So always know it's fine to have boundaries with intimacy. It's essential that guys know where your boundaries is. I mean, actually, I like it if I'm with a guy who's like, you can touch me where, that's a good thing about a heterosexual guy. If I'm saying a good thing about a heterosexual guy in terms of intimacy, I've had a lot of heterosexual guys like, you can touch me wherever you want. I don't have any problem with wherever you want to touch me. So that can be quite good for me, because it can be quite freeing, but I'm still like, don't touch me here. Don't touch me there. Don't touch me right on the ass. Don't touch me down there. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, you have to stand your ground and be very firm. right? But you obviously have to discuss things as well and share thoughts and feelings. You know, sometimes just heterosexual and asexuals aren't compatible. I mean, if a heterosexual guy really wants sex and an asexual girl doesn't, they're not compatible. They should just look for other people or stay single, right? You know, there's no point in being something you're not or forcing yourself to do something you're not happy with or not doing stuff you really want. So let's get back to this. Oh, we've got a thing playing in the background at the moment because I need to get back to this program. Whimsical music. And
Yes!
Sandy!
do we really want this? Not really. Right.
Obviously. But for me, I am quite an emotional person. And it was this kind of freeze in the headlights moment that I kept on running into, which was causing the issue. And it was constant. And then eventually, like, I ended up on the island and they were like, I remember, I think that there's a part in episode 2 where I cry in front of Tom, but before I started, she said to Tom, she went, Taylor might cry. And I was thinking, I'm not going to cry. He's just looking at me. And then he looked at me and I was like, and it just started. So I was like.
And was Tom your surrogate?
No, Tom's one of the other islanders.
He's one of the other islanders.
Yeah.
'Cause you had one of the things I was fascinated by was the sex therapists that you've got there that are helping you with your intimacy. Some of them are surrogates. So some of them are there potentially to just explain what, Jason, maybe you can explain.
To me, this sounds like a prostitute dressed as a therapist, but I don't want to say that, you know, out loud like I just did, because I'm like, okay, how is a surrogate different to a prostitute? Because they've just got the therapist experience behind them, and they're saying they're a therapist, and they got all the therapist qualifications, so it's okay if they be intimate like this. I find this weird. I find it very, very I don't know, it reminds me of futuristic films where they have like a sex bot or something, but that's not a real person, but as a surrogate. I don't know if you watch the movie The Surrogates. It's actually a movie. Let me get it up for you, right? The Surrogates. I've seen this. Right, The Surrogates. Oh, I can't even spell today. The Surrogates movie. Right. So this is one I've seen. And these are people that are clones. It's a very good movie, actually. It isn't totally sex-free, unfortunately. But it is, like, really, really good. So do you want to watch a bit of the trailer? It's like we're going on. Minky! So, thank you so much for being here.
Robotic human surrogates combine the durability of a machine with the grace and beauty of the human body. With most people living their lives through their surrogate selves, our world has become a safer place. Take a seat in your STEM chair, and just with the power of your mind, you can control your surrogate and send it out into the real world. You can live your life without limitations. You see what they see. Feel.
Right, I think that's enough of that. It's getting way too sexual now. That's me. Right, but you see what I mean? It's a bit weird. So it's just very, very strange when they're talking about surrogates. I'm like, this is like something out of this movie. It feels a bit creepy to me, but I don't know how you feel about that.
Explain what the surrogates are there for.
Well, I didn't have a surrogate, but the surrogates, Kat and Andre, they're there for the more hands-on of the nitty-gritty,
The
physicality of it. And you'll definitely see what happens with that.
So if you are prepared and confident enough to go forward with something more physical than
they're the ones that would do it.
The really intimate stuff, they are there for you to enable you to do that.
Yeah, they're there to
guide you through
you all the way through it and help you do it.
And help you so you know what you're doing and you can feel safe and you can feel confident. That's an extraordinary job, isn't it?
Well, it's better than, because if you're in a situation where you're going to go home and then have to do this with a stranger, like they're in a place where they're able to guide you through it, keep you safe, keep you calm, and take it in a really therapeutic place. It's not like hooking up with somebody on a night out. It's therapy, and it's all about taking you through the steps of intimacy and getting you to there.
I like actually how they discuss everything mentally and emotionally too, as well as just the physicality.
So I just want to let you know that I do think this is good because, like I just said earlier, intimacy is not just about physicality, it's about emotional intimacy and mental intimacy. even if people are having sex, right, you need to prepare for it emotionally and mentally, as well as physically. And soul, if you're a very spiritual person, you have to feel like you're connected to that other person's soul, and you have to be able to emotionally share how you feel. I mean, as an asexual person, sometimes when I did have sex in the past, I used to cry afterwards. It used to make me feel emotionally raw. So from that point of view, it wasn't a good experience. But I didn't know why at that time. I now know it's because I'm asexual. But sometimes I just used to feel raw and start crying afterwards. And I thought, this is really weird. And it didn't feel... I didn't hate doing that at the time. I was okay with it. It was consensual. But it left me feeling like raw and upset. And I didn't really understand why. I'm like, why do I feel so raw? Why do I feel so upset? This is not good. Why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't be feeling this way. Because obviously people who do have sex, it should be an enjoyable experience. It should be fun. If you're leaving the relationship point of having sex where you're crying afterwards, to me that means something's kind of wrong. Hello, Sandra. Another Sandra. Thanks still for being here, Minky. I appreciate you a lot. So you've got to understand that it's very important to have emotional intimacy, obviously even in friendships as well, you know, because emotional intimacy is still intimacy. So if you find you're a person who has problems with emotional intimacy, mental intimacy, physical intimacy, then you probably are more leaning towards a fear of intimacy in and of itself, which again, you should be working through with a therapist. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this type of therapy with a surrogate, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. I do understand the point where, you know, it can help if you are with a person who makes you feel safe and happy and comfortable. I think that's a good thing, but I don't understand all about this surrogacy thing because I've not watched this show that they're referring to. So in order to make a judgment on that, if you know what I mean, a more fair judgment, I would probably need to watch the show, but I don't watch TV. So I just think it sounds a bit weird. And if you see clips from it, it makes me feel like, oh, this is very strange. It looks like you're basically having sexual stuff with a therapist. And to me, it's like, how is that different to being with a prostitute, really? Because people can have sex with prostitutes or intimacy with prostitutes or hire an escort without necessarily even having sex with that escort. They could just be having them accompany them somewhere without the sex and getting used to intimacy that way. Or you could maybe be intimate with a friend, but that can blur the boundaries then between you and that person with friendship. Like, should it be a friendship or should it be more? So, you know what I mean? You've got to be very careful of that. But you could just practice like hugging people that have got nothing to do with like family or friends, hugging strangers first or something. Or you could practice with your friends saying, do you mind if I just give you a hug, hello, or goodbye? So I think it's always important to address the situation as to why you have a fear of intimacy. But if intimacy fears are something that shows up in multiple aspects of your life, like fear of sharing thoughts, fear of sharing feelings, fear of sharing physicality with someone, it's probably because you've got an avoidancy tendency where you feel like if you are intimate with someone in these ways, you'll be rejected or you'll experience something overwhelming and, you know, it'll feel like you're being smothered, for example. But like I said, if you're autistic, you can also get a sensory overload from physical intimacy. If you're doing a lot of touching, it can just be too much for you, right? So people who are autistic do have difficulties processing things, even expressing their feelings and emotions. So again, if you're autistic, it's going to be harder for you to explore where you have a fear of intimacy because of your autism, where you have a fear of intimacy because you've had difficult circumstances in your life, or a mixture of both, or whether you actually genuinely are asexual, right? It can be more difficult to discern that. So it's good to like explore your autism and how that may impact you and affect you. Also explore your childhood and previous relationships, and then explore why you feel you have a fear of intimacy. If you know for a fact, oh, I had a traumatic experience in a relationship and ever since then I've had a fear of intimacy, then it's going to stem from that trauma. Rather than if you're looking back and you've always had a problem with being intimately physically because you're just kind of like not thinking I want sex, that's much more likely to be asexuality. Like looking back on my life now, I know I've never felt, even as a child and teenager and growing up, I've never felt the need to have sex, or it never even entered my head. I wasn't thinking about that. right? So I was just thinking about kissing and cuddling. That's how I've always been. So I know that I'm definitely asexual because I'm not interested in that stuff, because I just don't feel the need, urge, or want for sex. I never have. So always examine things in your life yourself and be very self-aware. The more you're self-aware, the more you can help yourself in your own life, and you can get the help you need to better your life and better yourself and to express yourself better. So let's go on with the show. So I hope you're enjoying this.
Of everything. You just talked then about going home, because you recorded it, what, like a year ago or something like that?
Full year. We're on the anniversary.
So how has it been, like, since leaving the island? Because I think it's very...
Oh, why is it that this pigeon keeps coming on? It's so annoying. It's like I don't want to hear a pigeon squawking in the background. They keep playing way too many adverts. But oh, I want to go back a bit now. Like, look at this, right? Let's switch you round. Like, this to me, is this surrogacy? I mean, do you know what I mean? To me, this is like, what is the difference between a prostitute and a therapist surrogate? I don't really understand the fact they've got therapist qualifications. I'm not really getting it. Do you know what I mean? Because you can hire a prostitute without actually having sex with them. And they're used to doing these things, so they know how to do things and what to say and how to show you these things. I just find it weird. I've never known a therapist to do this, but clearly there's a niche for it. There's a market for it. I think it's good. Like, I understand how it's good that you're actually learning how to feel intimacy, physical intimacy in a safe, supportive environment in theory. But even so, I just find it weird. These therapists must just go doing this with loads and loads of different people. And I'm thinking, well, personally, I think it's better to teach people that, you know, you can be intimate. Like, you don't have to be intimate with loads of people or people you don't know. You could wait to the right relationship. And then you could then, you know, if you feel comfortable enough around someone, then you could explore intimacy with that person. You don't have to do this. But obviously they felt a need to change themselves because they think that maybe it's a problem. Like, the guy seems to say it was a problem, but the girl, like I said earlier on, it seemed to come from more of being judged by her friends, the need to have sex. Whereas the guy seemed to have a real problem with being touched and stuff, and therefore he wanted to conquer that. For me, the girl seemed more like, oh, well, my friends are making fun of me. They you know, they're doing videos on the fact I've never had sex and stuff like this. So they think I should do it. I'll go and do it. But she wanted to do it as well. That's clear. So always think about your reasoning behind why you're doing something. You know, you should always do something because you want to do it, not because someone else has told you to do it, making fun of you, making you feel like there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong if you don't want sex and you don't want physical intimacy. Very important. But do you know what I mean? This is a bit weird for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and you're supported by, as I said, the therapists, I think, are great, and they seem to support you in every way that you need to. But to suddenly leave the island and then be popped back into your regular life with your families and your friends, has it been since leaving the island, and have you been dating?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, well, thank you, ladies first. Well, I mean, for me, it was getting home was kind of like, for me, I know some people slid straight into it. It was kind of like hitting that brick wall all over again, because you get home and then you have to start putting it into practice. I have been on a couple of dates, but I've been so much more selective, because for me, I was pushing myself to do things I was uncomfortable with in an attempt to try and like make myself do the thing. Whereas now I can do what I feel is best for me. And I feel like my dating life has been a lot more positive because of it. Not necessarily more fruitful, but...
So I do think this is a very good thing that she's saying. She's saying basically she's having stronger boundaries with people and she's understanding her needs more. So I do think that this is a very big benefit of her doing this. She seems really happy that she's doing this, but obviously there is a fear and worry that she originally felt like she needed to do things in order to get that as the end result, like sex. So it's very interesting how her mindset has actually changed on that. And I think it's been beneficial to her for that reason. Let's play on.
But I feel like I'm not afraid to go on a date. I'm not afraid to make the first move. And that's something that it's given me that I didn't really have before. So that's really nice. Like, I can take that home with me.
That's
Good.
fabulous.
What about you?
So mine's a bit different. Well, okay. So the other a couple of weeks ago, I asked someone out for the first time on a date.
Amazing.
I can't say who this person is,
No.
but you'll see her on TV. I'm not going to spoil who it is, but she's currently abroad, and I said, would you ever come back to the UK, have a drink as a date? And she was saying, I don't know if I'll come back to the UK. So I said, is that a rejection? And she was like, don't be silly. Of course it's not a rejection. So I was like, yes. And I'm like, maybe I would have tried it as a rejection, because what if she doesn't come back to the UK? But I'm glad I did it, because without the island, I would not have had the confidence. Like, short sleeves now, I would never have worn this ever. Like, I'm so more confident.
So you're more exposed.
So I want to stop here a minute, because I knew an asexual person and they didn't like their arms exposed. They didn't like their flesh and skin exposed. Now, this can be a trait of asexuals, because if they don't want sex, they might feel that showing their flesh or parts of their body makes them more susceptible to having people approach them for sex. Obviously, these people are not asexual, right? If you've come partway through this conversation, they're not asexual. I'm just saying an asexual perspective view on a fear of intimacy, right? But there can be some people in the asexual community who do have a fear of showing their flesh for various reasons. But again, you've got to decide whether the reason for that is because you don't want a sexual attention, because you really are not interested in sex, and you're fed up of people asking you for sex when you're like, I'm really not interested in it because I don't experience sexual attraction, I don't want it, right? Or if it's because of some underlying thing where you had something happen in a relationship and now you're like repulsed by the idea of sex because you have a trauma around actual sex and intimacy, rather than a feeling if you just don't want it because it's just turning off for you, right? So always analyze yourself, right? I had a comment years ago from an older woman saying, oh, why do you wear these high cut tops? You should wear low cut tops to show your boobs off. And I'm like, well, I'm just not interested in showing my boobs, because I'm not that type of person that's like sexual in that way. I don't feel comfortable showing my boobs off. They're like mine and I don't want them on display. Do you know what I mean? And I know that stems from my asexuality. There is occasionally, very occasionally, you can probably see in videos where you can see a little bit of cleavage, but that's not very rare because I don't feel comfortable like that. I personally don't like that. So you have to understand, is it a fear of intimacy, or is it just a case of your personal boundaries, personal preferences, and the fact you don't want to attract sexual attention? I mean, I have guys nearly falling off their bicycles when I wear a t-shirt, right, rather than something long and baggy. When I wear a t-shirt and a short skirt, for example, because I got quite big cleavage, big bust, I have guys nearly, I've had guys going past on the bicycles nearly falling off it because they're looking at me. And so I don't even have to show flesh because guys naturally zoom in on this area. But obviously they're not my guys, are they? It's like if you're looking at my boobs and you're not looking at my face and my personality, you're not really my guy, right? Because I'm not a pair of walking boobs for you to oogle. I'm a like intelligent, smart being who's not even interested in a guy below the waist, for example. I like hi Heather, lots of love to you. I like a guy above the waist, like, right? So I'm attracted to guy's face and frame, not his below the waist, right? So it's really important that I'm interested in the guy's upper body. That's what I'm trying to say. So always analyze why you're not doing a certain thing, why you're not comfortable. I mean, some people, they just feel unlovable and like unattractive, and that's why they're not showing like their skin. I mean, I'm fine with showing my arms. I mean, I've got a t-shirt on at the moment. I actually think I look quite good in this t-shirt. Sometimes I like figure hugging stuff, but I'm not interested in a low cut top because I don't feel comfortable. But obviously this sticks in kind of right places somewhere, and I'm fine with showing this. I mean, I've got nice big muscles for a girl. I love my muscles. And, I like showing that off I'm not even showing off really. I'm just like being me, right? But I think you've really got to work out for yourself, like, why do you behave the way you do? Why do you think the way you think? Analyze it. Is it because of some trauma in my life? Is it because of some rejection? That type of thing. Or is it genuinely because I'm asexual, I'm not really interested in attracting attention from people? It makes me feel eerie. I've had guys leering at me, which makes me feel just disgusting on whatever gender you're into. And I just don't want to do that because it doesn't make me feel comfortable. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't dress to please other people in whatever way. We shouldn't dress and think we have to dress unsexually because we're asexual, or we shouldn't have to dress really overtly sexual because other people expect it. So you should dress in what you feel comfortable with and what feels good to you, regardless of whether you look sexy or not in your asexuality. You can still be asexual and look sexy and hot. I look sexy and hot sometimes, but it's not for showing my cleavage off. It's just because I personally like the look of myself. Do you know what I mean? I just personally think, oh, wow, because I've got used to my body. I've done a lot of training and work on my body, which is really important to do. So I recommend going in front of a mirror, standing there naked and literally saying lots of nice things to yourself. Like, I do call my body sexy and stuff like that because I love doing that, because it's a way of me to love my body. Years ago, I didn't like it, right? So I've done a lot of mirror work, literally looking at myself in the mirror saying, you're sexy, you're hot, you're gorgeous. Obviously, if you're an asexual that doesn't like being sexy, despite the fact you're asexual, then don't do that, right? I like being sexy, even though I'm asexual, because I know other guys find me sexy. I know I find myself sometimes sexy. It's like, I'm like, what is it with that? I'm like, oh, well, I just enjoy it, you know, because I'm fine. I'm fine in my asexuality. I'm fine in my sexiness. I'm fine that I'm a sex repulsed asexual these days. I'm not interested in sex for me, but I still have this energy of passion and excitement that's, for me, non-sexual, as in I don't want to do sexual acts and I don't want a guy to see me naked, you know. So I know I'm not coming from a place where I've got trauma and therefore that's not why I have sex anymore. I'm coming from a place of like, I'm fine in my body, I'm fine in my essence, I'm fine in my sexiness, I'm fine in my asexiness, I'm fine in all of that. If I want to have sex again, I would, but I just don't. I'm not interested, right? And of course I get a little bit fearful if a guy is doing things he's not supposed to or trying to do things. That's natural, right? No people should be trying to go over your boundaries, whatever sexual orientation you are. So always work out, analyze, face your fears head on and say, why am I this way? Let's break it down. Let's see if there is something that happened in my life to make me be this way, make me feel this way, or if it's genuine, like I was always this way, but life took me in another direction because that's what society dictated to me. And I didn't realize that such a thing as asexuality existed at the time. If it did, I'd have felt a lot more relieved, which is where I come from, you know, that place. Right, let's go on. This is nearly ended now, so a little bit more to go.
Exposing yourself. It's amazing, isn't it? For a lot of people, they'll think that's a really simple thing, just putting a t-shirt on and getting your arms out in the sunshine. But actually, it was a really big deal for you, Jason. This whole thing is a really big deal for all of you. You're so brave. It's fascinating.
Thank you.
Really, really engaging watch as well.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
And how much you've come on as people as well since the first show, because we've only watched the first one, haven't we? The first two. But you were like so confident and sparkly and
Thanks.
well done.
Oh, thank you. I'm not crying, which is a massive difference from the show.
No, can I just say, I sat out that session because I had a sore throat because I left the aircon on.
This was the first one. You know, yeah. But do you think you would have sat it out if you went back and did it now, even with a sore throat?
Maybe, maybe. But now, like presently, not at all. I'll be proper in. I'll be like, yeah man, wave it about. No,
thank you so much for coming on and chatting to us.
And good luck with the dating. Long may they be fruitful and exciting.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Virgin Island continues tonight, 9 o'clock on Channel 4. Oh, hello.
So that's Virgin Islands they're talking about. Now, this was produced on May the 13th. We're now on May the 16th in the UK. So I will link this full episode in the description of this video after I've gone off being live. So give it a little time to process, and then that will be on here down below. So if you do want to watch the whole show again without me interrupting it, you can do. Obviously, I don't own the copyright to that. It is copyrighted to This Morning TV. I was just showing it for educational and entertainment purposes. I have to state that. So I think I hope that you got a good sense of the difference between a fear of intimacy and asexuality. To just recap, asexuality is a sexual orientation based on the lack of sexual attraction. Now, lack can have two meanings. It can mean you haven't got any of something, or you haven't got enough of something. So I don't have any sexual attraction whatsoever. I don't experience it. But people on the more sexual end of the asexual spectrum, such as the grey asexuals, they can experience sexual attraction, but only under limited, rare or specific circumstances usually, or they experience it but not enough to want to act on it. So it's not it's not the usual type. They lack it because they don't have the full sexual attraction going on like a heterosexual person would, for example. So I hope I've made that clear. Some asexuals can still have difficulties with intimacy because of their asexuality. Some asexuals are very sex repulsed. Some asexuals literally physically throw up if they're having sex because they really don't want it that much. They don't like the act of it. And so you've got to analyze, like, why do you not want physical intimacy? If you've got problems with physical intimacy, mental intimacy, and emotional intimacy, you need to analyze that, right? You could still very well be asexual, but it's probably coming from a place of some avoidancy attachment style, something like that. If you've got problems with all those different types of intimacies, where you've been hurt in the past, rejected, dismissed, made to feel small, made to feel like your opinions don't matter and your feelings don't matter and your needs don't matter. So analyze that. It doesn't mean to say that you're not asexual if you're avoidant. You can still be asexual and avoidant, but we need to understand where your intimacy fears are coming from. And there are a lot of people that avoid sexual intimacy due to the fact they're avoiding intimacy, full stop. Also, you've got to be very careful. I haven't talked about this and discussed it because I don't really think it's that relevant, but there are some people in this world, such as narcissists, which I've had other videos about, who use not having sex as a form of control and manipulation. They withhold sex on purpose. That is not the same as being asexual and someone who's sex repulsed and doesn't want sex, fundamentally because they're asexual, right? Don't confuse these two, right? But there are some people that do that in this world. I just want you to be aware of that as something, you know? And so always be aware. There is a sexual orientation that someone's come up with on Reddit, and it's a term for people who class themselves as asexual due to trauma, right? Asexuality is not the same as being traumatized and not able to have sex because of that. I have to make that distinction. So I personally don't think it's a good thing that they have then brought out a sexual orientation on Reddit. That means that you can still say you're asexual and it relates to your trauma. I don't like that from the point of view it doesn't explain asexuality. It kind of lets people believe that asexuality and trauma is the same thing, or it stems from trauma. I don't personally like that. However, I think everyone has the right to identify how they are, and some people feel more comfortable identifying like that. And so there are some people that come into the asexual community like that. It's me being honest with you. But not wanting sex or intimacy because of trauma, rather than it being a lack of sexual attraction, is two separate things. So I personally don't think it's a great idea that they decided on Reddit to make that subcategory up. That's where it came from, I found from my research, but you can do your own research about that. However, if the people that are so traumatized because they've had a really bad traumatic experience feel that they need to come into the asexual community and that gives them a sense of identity, then who am I to say not to do that, right? And if they're coming to our community because there's nowhere else for them to go, what does that say about society and people who, you know, make people feel bad if they have had, for example, sexual trauma? You know, because people still are valid even if they've had sexual trauma, and it's understandable they don't want sex. And you could argue that if their trauma has stopped them wanting sex at all, stopped them needing it, stopped them liking it, they literally don't feel that need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse anymore, you could argue that's how they fall into asexuality and can call themselves asexual, because by the definition of them not experiencing sexual attraction anymore. So this is a very controversial topic. I'm not here to debate all that now, but I am here to just give you my personal opinion on it and say this is how it actually is, right? But they are two different things, asexuality and a fear of intimacy due to trauma and experiences and avoidancy tendencies, right? So you have to understand the distinction, especially if you're a person who wants to genuinely know, Do I have the fear of intimacy because of other reasons, or am I asexual? Because for some people, this is weighing on their mind. They're like, please give me guidance on this, because I want to know. I don't want to label myself as asexual if I'm not asexual. And it's for a fact I got a lot of trauma. I either need to work through it or need to come to terms with it and understand this is how my life is now, right? So always, always have self-reflection, discernment in yourself, and know that you're valid, whatever happens in your life. And I'm sending you so much love right now. And to all the asexuals and people that are not asexual who've watched this tonight, I support you. I applaud you for having the courage to face this question about yourself or about people you know, or to just be here and show up and learn about something. And I really, really thank you for being here. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Subscriptions really, really matter. And every one of you counts. It's free to subscribe, doesn't cost you anything. But it really helps me to raise awareness of asexuality and to give you educational content like this and for it to reach more people, which I think is vital. Some people really stressed out right now. They're like, do I have a fear of intimacy or am I asexual? I really don't know. I'm so confused. This video is definitely for those types of people. Okay, so anyway, I'm sending you so much love. Don't forget, if you're new to asexuality, you want to know more, grab a copy of Asexual Perspectives book, 47 Asexual Stories on Amazon. Minky, that's been in this chat tonight, is in fact in this book. And also Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual, 78 Life Lessons to Ace Your Life. I am going to go to Jack in the chat. So yes. I'm just going to go to chat quickly. Right, I have a fear of intimacy and have often wanted to be asexual because of it. But the truth is I'm afraid of rejection and of being in a bad relationship. Well, I want to hold personal space now for Jack, right? Because Jack has actually shared something. And I'm not going to go off here straight away when Jack has shared something. So I want to praise you for having the courage to share and be vulnerable with us in chat on this channel, because it takes a lot of guts, a lot of self-awareness to share what you've just shared. And I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you speaking your truth out loud, because that is the first way that we heal and we get to understand ourselves and can be intimate with ourselves. That's something I haven't actually touched on, right? So for those of you who can stay on the stream a bit longer, I have to say that we can have a fear of intimacy with ourselves, right? And what this looks like is we don't want to access our own emotions. We don't want to deal with our emotions, especially painful emotions. And we don't want to be facing them head on, right? But in order for us to heal past traumas, heal past wounds, heal past relationship breakups, we have to be able to sit in our own pain for a while with those emotions and literally cry. Now, if you're avoidant attachment style, crying and letting out emotions will be something that scares usually the shit out of you, excuse my language, right? But this is the way we begin to be intimate with ourselves, by releasing these tears, right? A lot of people hold tears in and they don't want to show them. They think it's weakness and they can't deal with it and it's overwhelming, right? But you have to allow yourself to sit in your own emotional pain sometimes and just let the tears flood out. This gets them out of the system and helps you self-regulate. It helps you to calm your nervous system down, and it helps you to feel so much better in the long term. Not in the short term, it won't let you feel that, but well, you might feel bursts of relief, but in the short term, over a period of time, you'll get to know yourself better and get to appreciate yourself better and stop being so harsh on yourself, right? And you'll get to love yourself more. So I talked about mirror work. That's one of the ways you can be more physically intimate with yourself, through mirror work, right? Like to get used to your own body, touching your own body, feeling your own body, getting to know what feels good to you and what doesn't feel good to you. This is physical intimacy with yourself. If you're not intimate with yourself mentally, if you're not mentally switched on to what your feelings, thoughts and emotions are, you're going to be closed off to other people. If you're not emotionally in tune with yourself, so if you're blocking your feelings out, blocking your emotions, you'll have disassociation, derealization, might have depersonalization, all these things going on where you're disconnected from yourself, then that is not emotional intimacy. That's the opposite, right? This is gonna affect all your relationships with other people, including friendships, right? And then if you're not mentally in tune with what you're thinking, your thoughts, then again, you're not going to be so self-aware in order to be able to assess your friendships, relationships, communication with others, and intimacy with others. You need to get to know your own mind, your own body, your own emotions, and your own soul, like how you connect with others on a spiritual level if you're a spiritual person. So I really want to applaud Jack. I think everyone should say to Jack how amazing it is that you've been able to come forward and share these very vulnerable things about yourself. I think it's very important what Jack shared as well, because Jack did say, I wanted to be asexual. And some people are like, oh, why would you be asexual? Why would you want to be asexual? Like we even have a choice. The people who are asexual are just asexual, right? But I have to say there are some people that want to be asexual. I've heard some people say to me, oh, well, your life must be so much easier because you're asexual. You don't have all the sexual stuff to contend with. And, you know, it's more freeing for you. So there are people that actually think asexual life is a better concept, if you like, even though it's not a concept, it's something an asexual person actually lives. But there are people that look up to it like that, if you know what I mean. So I really appreciate you sharing your truth, that you're afraid of rejection and of being in a bad relationship. I'm afraid of getting into a bad relationship again. But, you know, I've had bad relationships in the past, but it doesn't stop me still being open to connection. But I can see how it would. And there's a time I've been actively off dating sites for a whole year. You know, I've not been proactive on them for a year in order to take a time out when I had a really difficult relationship last year with a guy who ended up being narcissistic, and I didn't realize he was. Because Dr. Ramani, if you watch Dr. Ramani's videos, she's a top expert in narcissism. She says if you've been in a narcissistic relationship, to have a year off, otherwise you're likely to attract another person that's either narcissistic or very unhealthy. So I think it's very important to work on your rejection fears and that type of thing with a qualified therapist. I'm not a therapist. I do offer coaching one-on-one, but I'm not a qualified therapist. So Jack, I'm 34 now and don't date at all. Right, okay. So you said, let me go back. Sorry, I didn't see all your comments. Thank, I appreciate you too. You said, I've never felt comfortable on a date. My mum and dad had a very violent relationship, and I remember being young and feeling that falling in love was a weakness better avoided. I perfectly understand that. When you see that, I mean, obviously the relationship was totally unhealthy and that wasn't love. One thing that's really bad is when someone says, I love you, and that they go and punch you, or they put you down, they gaslight you, they get defensive and stonewall you, they mentally or emotionally abuse you, and they still call that love, right? It's not love. You could call it a toxic love if you want, but it's not actually love. That's not what love is like, right? Love is supposed to be kind and caring and compassionate and giving and teamwork. So it's hard when people say things are love and they love each other when clearly they don't, when they want to rip each other's throats out. Basically, it's hard because that isn't love. So I'm so sorry if you experienced that. Jack says, I'm 34 now and I don't date at all. Stuffed animals help. Laugh out loud. I'd never tell my mates. That's one of my coping mechanisms. Oh, bless you. Yeah, I mean, stuffed animals like cuddly toys actually calm the nervous system down. It can be a very therapeutic thing, and it can be something that coaches or therapists recommend. Is if you go, especially if you don't have a pet in your home, because pets can be very soothing with stroking them. So when you have a cuddly toy, then you can stroke the cuddly toy or hold it close to you to give you a feeling of comfort and safety and support. And if you were a person, like you said, that had childhood trauma, very severe like that, maybe you had a cuddly toy you were holding at the time, and your anchor for safety was in that cuddly toy, right? You felt a lot calmer and safe and secure when you were holding the cuddly toy, like that was your safety net. So it's a practice that you then carry on with later in your life. And when life gets really difficult, you do that again automatically, you know. But it's good to be able to understand what makes you feel soothed, because we have to try and calm our nervous system down. Because if you're in a situation like that, those type of violent things in your childhood, you can just carry on throughout your life. Obviously, I would, if you're not already, advise to work with a therapist, particularly one that specializes in childhood trauma, because it's very difficult for you. There is a YouTuber called Patrick Tehan, and you can watch his videos for free, and he specializes in childhood trauma. TEAHAN. So let me see if I can get that for you. So if you don't have enough money to go to therapy right now, let me get his YouTube up. He's really, really good. I watch him. So Patrick, TEAHAN, although I haven't watched him for a little while. Right, so I'm going to switch you around now. So Patrick Tehan, here he is. So
To be so for real.
So this is his channel. So I will put a link to his channel in the description as well. So he's really, really good. And he does loads of videos about childhood trauma, but he's a childhood trauma survivor himself. So he is not a therapist that just literally talks the talk but has no idea what he's actually talking about. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced therapists like that. They, you know, you go to them about anxiety and then they make you more anxious. You go to them to try and get you to, you know, to like work through unhealthy relationships, and they're unhealthy themselves, right? We've all experienced that probably. But this guy has actually gone through childhood trauma. He's actually gone through group therapy himself and come out the other side. So he's based in America. He actually still does, you know, well, he does coaching. He's got a coaching group you can join, or he does therapy, but only in America. I'm in the UK. So I love this. We don't let toxic people tell us who we are anymore, because a lot of us obviously are living out lives based on childhood trauma and the way people treat us badly or neglected us, right? And this goes on throughout our lives unless we recognize this and do something about it ourselves, because we can't change the past. We can only change how it affects us now in the present by working through it with therapists, or, you know, even go on Patrick's channel because he's got a lot of free helpful videos. We can start to unpick what happened to us and how they make us feel a certain way and take certain actions. So Jack, I think what most people have is just a transactional relationship. Yeah, so transactional relationships are very toxic. That's not how it should be. I mean, obviously, like, people don't want to be in a relationship with someone who has no value to their life, right? It just doesn't happen, because obviously you want someone to add value to your life, but you want to be a whole person as much as possible. You're never going to be completely healed usually before you get into a relationship. That's just a myth, right? So we need to work on ourselves to get healthier and healthier for ourselves and for other people that we might end up in relationships or friendships with. But a lot of people, I do agree, a lot of people think, oh, if I do something for you, you've got to do something for me and make it conditional. That isn't an actual healthy relationship. However, you're not going to want to be in a relationship with a person who cannot meet your needs, right? Because in relationships, you've got to discern between what are my actual needs that I actually want, that are healthy needs in a relationship. For example, having someone hold space for me when I'm feeling hurt, and them trying not to be judgmental and listening to me and validating me in a healthy way. These are type of needs we have, like communication needs, like the need for your own space as well. All these type of things you need. So people should be like coming together to discuss needs, negotiate things. If you've both got really different needs, like how can you come to a middle ground? But no one wants to get into a relationship with someone where the other person isn't doing enough work. Both people have to work at the relationship as a team. The moment someone stops working in a relationship as a team, if that carries on, you can't be in a relationship with it, because there is no team anymore, right? So relationships, including friendships, require a lot of time, energy, and effort. It is hard having a relationship, even a friendship, right? There's a healthy one. It's actually harder having a relationship with a healthy person, in the sense you have to open up about your needs more, listen to the other person, try not to get defensive, try and understand your triggers, try and understand why you react the way you do, try and understand your own attachment styles and make adjustments accordingly, pay attention to how they're treating you, pay attention to your needs, try to get your needs expressed in a good, healthy way, non-confrontational. It's actually harder to do that than it is if you're in a dynamic where people are just not talking to each other, and they're just like, oh, we just make small talk, right? Which is not healthy, but it's easier if you're used to that, because it's like, oh, well, there's no confrontation, There's no like discussing things. Don't have to put the effort in to actually discuss things because we just know you can't talk to this person because they're going to flare up or say, oh, well, I'm not interested, or say you're uncomfortable. You're like, so what? You shouldn't be like that. That's totally unhealthy, right? So for some, in some scenarios, that can be easier because it's something we're used to. People shutting down, shutting us out, not speaking, and you're not confronting anyone about the needs and problems and difficulties. So it can be less scary because basically you're holding it all into yourself, but that's not actually healthy. So it can be harder, especially if you come from a background that's not healthy, or toxic family environment, toxic like relationship environment in the past, toxicity in your dynamics at a uni, for example, even this type of thing, or past relationship. It's it can be harder to understand what a healthy relationship looks like, and it's going to take work. You think like a healthy relationship is going to be easier, but it can be a lot harder because you're not used to it. You have to work. You have to work and changing the way you do things, like showing up for yourself and speaking your needs, which is scary shit, right? Because you worry about being rejected. You worry about the other person putting you down. You worry that the other person will abandon you. You worry that the other person will get defensive. If they're a healthy individual, they'll say stuff like, thank you for sharing that with me. I really appreciate it. They might ask you more questions about it. They might just say, okay, well, I've heard you and I'll try to do better in the future. And they actually take action and do better in the future, So you've got to be having an awareness about yourself and about how you are the way you are. So transactional relationships shouldn't be a thing that you think is healthy. Having said this, no one wants to be in a relationship with someone that isn't putting that time, energy, and effort into it. And there is always some sort of, how can I put it? There's some sort of I think there's some sort of transaction going on in the sense that you do have standards in a relationship, right? And I think like a transactional relationship usually is someone who does something for you basically because you'll do something back for them, and that's an unhealthy dynamic. I had a friend years ago and she was all about transactions, like, oh, I've done something for you, now you should do something for me. That is really unhealthy, and transactional relationships are a bad thing in general. But there are elements, sorry, I just went off for a bit, there are elements of a relationship where you do have like give and take. You do have you wouldn't be with a person who wasn't giving you something back. That's what I'm trying to say. You wouldn't be with a person who you put all the time, energy and effort into, and they were just not really listening, not bothered where they text you or not communicating much with you, blowing hot and cold with you. That wouldn't be good. They need to put some sort of effort in. And you could say that you want reciprocity, right? Although reciprocity is not transactional per se, there is still some exchange going on. There's some exchange of you doing things for the other person. You do have this kind of underlying expectation or standard as where you do expect someone to be kind to you back. You have a basic core fundamental needs, right, which are healthy needs, to have kindness and respect and consideration, right? They're not really transactional, but you could argue that because you're contributing to a friendship or relationship, you expect the basic minimum of respect, and kindness back. So you are getting something back. So if you're exchanging something for something other, if you know what I mean. But obviously it's not conditional in the sense that, okay, if this person does not meet my standards, it's not going to be healthy for me, I will then have to leave. And a transactional relationship can be like you're doing something for someone else, they do something for you, might not even be your values. They're just saying, well, I did something for you now. That's not healthy, right? So there are people out there that just genuinely care, right? I think people have got to assess their motives and the other person's motives, but know that there are people who are working on themselves, who do want healthy relationships, who can transform themselves, can change themselves, and who can become a lot healthier. And, if you are one of those people that's working on yourself and becoming healthier in and of yourself, then those people exist because you're doing it yourself. Does that make sense? It's same as if you think that there's no people serious on dating sites for a relationship. If you're on a dating site and you're serious looking for a relationship, then you know there are people on there because you're on there, right? So always look inwards as well. But remember to work on things. Never think you can't change, because you can change, but you have to want to change and recognize you need change. There gets to a point in your life where you just have so much toxic relationships coming into life. They're like, right, I need to do something about this. That's why I'm working on myself. That's why I joined the Love Life Club, Matthew Hussey's Love Life Club, which is the world's #1 dating and relationship coach. You know, he's the world's #1. He's on YouTube. He's got years of experience. I've been in there 1 year. I'm in my 2nd year now. I intend to be there for at least 5 years. Every single year, working on myself, week in, week out. Why? Because I don't want to keep attracting toxic guys. And I'm like, well, clearly I'm doing something wrong, right? And, you know, I do have difficulties expressing my needs, and in a way that I'm consciously aware, like, how do I express them without being confrontational? And how do I even say them, right? So, because if you come from a background or dynamic at all where your needs weren't heard, they weren't met, in fact, you should never have needs according to the other person, or they just dismiss you, you know, then you're not used to sharing your needs, and you're used to people not caring about your needs. And so why bother sharing it? Because you know that you're just going to get some dismissive person. They're just going to not like listen to you. They're going to belittle you and make you feel small and unworthy and unloved or whatever, right? So we've all got fears, but you have to like work on yourself if you want to change your life. There comes a time when life becomes so painful. You're like, well, I either have to work on myself, or I just keep attracting the wrong people that represent what I went through years ago with a relationship or past childhood, right? So you have to take control of the situation yourself, because no one's going to do it for you, and change, because it's too painful to stay as you are, you know? And that's why you come to breaking point. You're like, I've got to change. That's why last year with the relationship I had, I'm like, I'm at breaking point now. I didn't expect that to happen again. I feel like my heart's been ripped out of my body. And clearly I made some mistakes myself by the fact I didn't listen to my own advice. I give good advice and I didn't actually listen to my own advice. There's a red flag in this person's profile and I didn't listen to it. So now I'm like, yeah, I have to listen to my own advice, right? Sometimes we're the worst person for listening to our own advice, right? But we should always listen to our own advice. It's very important. Sometimes I watch my own videos back just to reinforce what I've said for myself. I'm like, that was really good advice, Sandra. But you need to instill it in your brain and make it work. Sometimes I watch old videos as well to do that. But anyway, thank you, Jack, for being here. Thank you, Minky. Thanks for you, Heather. Thanks for everyone else that's been here in chat. I am going to love you and leave you right now. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode, as well as giving this a thumbs up. I appreciate you, Jack, for being vulnerable, sharing your truth. You did something very, very brave, and I know this is the start of a new journey for you. I really know that, because admitting these difficult things and your truth is what starts a healing journey. And I hope that that journey is a long and good one that leads to happiness for you. When I say long, not to in a bad way, long as in you're able to get through the trauma, the horrendous trauma that you experienced in childhood, and work through the difficulties, because it takes years to reprogram your mind, to have new beliefs instilled. It's not an overnight thing, and that's why I'm in the Love Life Club another year and want to be in there for at least 5 years, because I know that I'm learning new patterns and new ways of being, but I have to constantly have the repetition of them instilled into my brain. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave that club and I'm going to go back to the way I was, because other dating coaches are unhealthy themselves and they're just doing clickbait and they're just saying the wrong things to hook you in, is going to get in my head. And I'm going to get confused, like thinking, well, that's not what I was taught. But having repetition constantly over years, you then actually hardwire your system, your brain, your nervous system to be different, so that you keep repeating it until it gets like reprogrammed into you. So it becomes more natural and you don't need so much support or constant repetition, because it's like second nature to you. That's what I'm trying to say. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, do check out my books. Like I said, Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual, Asexual Perspectives, 47 Asexual Stories. If you are going through difficult times in relationships, I really would recommend this book, because there's 78 life lessons in here. And I talk about attachment styles in this book. Very important. Very important. I would definitely get this one if it's to do with dating relationships that you're really struggling with. There's a lot of important life lessons that you can apply whatever sexuality you are. It was a best-selling book last year. It was actually, I released this in the first format, ebook, when I split up with my ex. Down split with my ex. I released this book over in a few days. I published the print book, I think it was like the next day or the day after. The next day, I think this was the 16th, the other was the 15th of April. And it was a bestseller, I think, by the 17th. So yeah, globally, internationally, you know, like globally in America and in Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. So I said globally, I meant in Amazon.com and, you know, internationally in Amazon.co.uk, if that makes sense. So I definitely get this book. It'll really help you. And so, yeah, looking forward to being with you again. I hope you've got value. Please share this video with anyone you think may benefit from it. Any family, friends, strangers, post it on your Facebook, post it on your Instagram, wherever you want. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Minky. Lots of love. Appreciate you. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone else, for watching. I'm sure I've met, oh, another person called Sandra as well. Thank you for being here. I love you dearly, and I'll see you soon in the next video live stream. Take care, and see you soon. Bye.